San Diego, if not even in our own households, kind of the effects of what happens when we are not in tune with ourselves. So I'd like to offer for us to think on that a little bit this evening. So again, thank you for spending your evening with us. I was definitely mindful about this is how I wanted to spend my evening this day, this month, this year. So happy to be with other folks. So here's kind of how the layout of the evening. I want to do a grounding activity for folks because I acknowledge that our lives are busy and our minds are busy. I can acknowledge that my life is busy and my mind is busy. Then I'm going to get into some verbiage and some theory that's around individualism and collectivism and wanting to get us to think about where we stand in the cultural orientation. I know a lot of times we think about orientation in terms of race or sexuality or even education, but I'm not sure that some of us think in the cultural aspect about which realm are we in? Are we individualistic? Are we collectivist? Or are we kind of somewhere in between? The third activity is narrative therapy. So there's kind of going to be some art involved to get us to engage with our dimensions. A lot of us as human beings, we're multifaceted. We're very complex. So I kind of wanted us to physically draw that out so we can kind of see what that looks like. And then last but not least, trying to tie this into a leadership theory that I'm very fond of, the adaptive leadership theory, which is more or less how to effectively respond to issues that are reoccurring over and over and over again. So first things first, I invite you all to turn off your cameras. And if you can, maybe find a quiet space where you're able to be. And I'm gonna invite us to, I want us to get really comfortable. So if you're sitting in a chair, that's fine. If you have the opportunity to lay down and still hear my voice, I think that that's fine, or sit on the floor, whatever is comfortable for you. I just invite you to be in a space that is safe for you in your home, that is comfortable. So as you do that, I'm going to, oops, I'm supposed to go back. I'm gonna lead us through a 3-minute breathing activity. So at this time, as you become very comfortable in your space, if you can close your eyes, if you feel safe enough to do so. Now I'm going to time this. So for the first minute, I want you to spend time thinking about the following question. How am I doing right now? So I want you to focus on the question, how am I doing right now? And think about the feelings and the thoughts and the sensations that arise as you try to give words and phrases into this answer. How am I doing right now? And let's be honest with ourselves. Now, as we're bringing awareness into our feelings and our thoughts of how we are doing, how we are really doing, I'd like to offer for the second minute of this exercise to spend that time keeping awareness of your breath. Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it somewhere in between? Is it more comfortable breathing through your mouth, through your nose? Maybe a little bit of both. And for the last minute, let's use this time to keep our awareness on our breath, but maybe expanding our attention a little bit more, feeling the ways in which your breathing might affect the rest of your body. How is your breath maybe affecting your chest, or your stomach, your fingertips, your palms? Are they kind of sweaty? Are your hands clenched? Are they free? Maybe try to identify where in your body your breath is affected the most. And with that, I'd like to invite everybody to come back. Slowly start opening your eyes, maybe still focusing on your breath. Be aware of your surroundings. If you're laying down, maybe it's a good time to start sitting up. Finding your way back into the chair in front of your computer or your phone or your iPad. But I'd like to invite everybody back into the space. And then I'd like to ask for anybody who is willing to share, how are you doing right now?
I'll start. I am functioning. Some days are more stressful than the others. I do work with the public, homeless individuals. So you never know how each person is going to be. So you almost have to be on guard. Like, okay, are they okay today? Are they having a bad day? And today was one of those days where I was just feeling that I was feeling everything, that was coming at me, and I was taking it all in. When I came home, I took a long hot shower. I've noticed that the muscles across my back are starting to get really tight. So I have to find my massager somewhere to try to let them loose. When I was breathing, I know that it's always best to have measured breathing. So it did actually loosen up some of the tension across, but I am a very spiritual person. I did grow up in the church. I'm very involved in my church. So I always have that, but some days are rougher than others. And this pandemic is really, well, it's hurting everybody, but truly the homeless population that I help serve. because they're used to things being a certain way, and it hasn't been that way for months. So it's really weighing on them, probably way more than me. But we keep trying to reassure them, services is not going to stop. You just can't come in the building anymore. And stuff like that. And they're used to coming in, being able to sit down and in a chair and relax instead of on hard concrete or wherever, that they gather. So it's hard some days, but I work in a small office, so it's like a family, so we can all like bounce it all off of each other, try to laugh off some of the crazier things that happen. But it does take it builds up, and it does take a toll every once in a while. And I'm kind of feeling it right now, but we have a vacation, we have a day off in the middle of the week next week, so I'm going to do some me things and try to do some stuff to really help me relax. And I do pray daily. I post on Facebook every day a Bible verse, just to, and a lot of times, and of course I do it more for me than anybody else, but it's always reassuring when somebody says, oh, I really love what you posted. I really needed to hear that verse. Or I've read the Bible, but now that verse is really speaking to me and stuff like that. So that's really heartwarming for me.
I appreciate your authenticity in the question of how am I really doing. And so thank you for sharing that. And again, thank you for being here with us. And I would offer too that you mentioned next week you're going to be doing some stuff for you. I would offer that this is something for you too, that you're taking some time to
most definitely. When I saw that this was one of the ones coming up, I said, oh, I'm doing that one.
Thank you.
I'm so happy about that. Well, I'm hoping that we can oh, I see that Lawana is here. Lawana, did you want to answer how you're doing right
now? I feel like I'm in the eye of the hurricane. I felt like this was the best thing I could do before 8 o'clock when the polls close.
Yeah.
In terms of being centered and prepared for whatever is to come. I tried really hard to demonstrate that you can run for office without getting your hands dirty or making false promises or pretending to be somebody that you're not and all those other things. And now I guess we get to see like what value integrity has in this space. And I'm okay with either outcome because it wasn't for me about me. It was about me seeing that there were problems that I might be able to solve, and hi, I can help. And if the help is accepted, then I'll give it in good spirit. If the help is not accepted, I'll reclaim my time with gratitude.
I know that's right. And you're still going to be doing the work anyway. So whether you get, the title or not, I was really excited because I was telling Mika that I voted for her. I saw her name on the ballot and I voted for her.
I did too. I voted for you.
I might be starstruck a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This was the perfect thing to do on this night because, somebody asked me because, people always want me to prepare speeches and I don't ever prepare a speech. I just don't. And but I thought about, because there's 4 things they wanted me to address. They wanted me to have my concession speech ready for if I lose. And they wanted me to have my acceptance speech ready for if I win. But they also wanted me to have a speech ready for if Biden wins, and then a speech ready for if Trump wins. And I thought about that, and I thought about all those possibilities and permutations, and I realized that really one speech will do it. I don't need to, yeah. So, we'll see what happens, and we trust God. Because maybe the lesson that we need to learn in all of this is what's really important to us. Sometimes you don't appreciate things that are going well until they're not.
That's real. That's
Yeah, and
real.
there are people in our lives who always thought the way that they thought, and we didn't know it because they didn't feel safe showing it to us.
True.
And now we know. And we can
Figure it out.
knowledge. Yeah.
It's very clear. There's no going back from it either. And now that I know, I can't unknow it.
Right.
So, with that, I know that there's a lot of energy around, this day, this month, this year. So I'd like to share a video with folks that I feel is really powerful and that we try to use a lot in all of our events at Rise San Diego to kind of instill some more hope and some more power into the work that's already being done, and some honoring the ancestors before us who put in the work before us too. So here we go. I do want to make sure, are you guys able to hear it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? It's because I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like suns and like moons, with the certainty of times, just like hope springing high. Still I rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eye, shoulders falling down my teardrops, weakened by my soul surprise. Does my sassiness upset you? Don't take it so hard just because I laugh, as if I have gold mines digging in my own backyard. You can shoot me with your words, you can cut me with your lies, you can kill me with your hatefulness, but just like life, I'll rise. Does my sexiness offend you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance as if I have diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain, I rise. A black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear. Into a daybreak miraculously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave.
What immediate results do you hope to achieve?
Well, we hope to achieve equal rights
right, y'all, how do we feel from that video? Just wanted to check in with folks.
It's beautiful. I've always liked that speech, I Rise. I've always liked that one.
It's hard not to, right? It's like one of the most powerful speeches and poems I've ever heard in my life. So with that, yeah, I wanted to kind of acknowledge in the grounding activity where we are, where we might be, and then with this video, acknowledge that even with those feelings inside of us and outside of us, around us, that I'd like to believe that we are still in a position where we are rising up, and progress is happening, even if it doesn't always feel like it. So I wanted to get into, let me move forward. Make sure that doesn't play again. So I wanted to move forward on this idea of individualism and collectivism. So for individualism, this is something that's defined for folks who may or may not know, but it's a philosophy and a way of living that pretty much prioritizes an individual over a community. And something that I think that a lot of people don't realize is that this is kind of the hallmark of Eurocentrism, which is basically a colonial ideology that fuels a racist and capitalistic system that we're in right now. And a lot of Western cultures, especially the United States, we're very individualistic, and we promote individualism. And it's this idea that an individual's rights take higher reward or higher precedence, depending on others, is considered very, very shameful. We shame people for being, not being able to do it on their own, not being able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. We've heard that over and over again. And so again, I think that as Americans, I myself am, a citizen of the United States. And as a woman of color, I think that I underestimate the extent to which individualism is implicated in matters of race. And I notice over and over again how this hallmark of Eurocentrism, how this thing that's rooted in colonialism is rooted in how white people see racism. They more or less see racism the way they see the world, through an individualistic lens. So an example is that, a lot of good white people, self-identifying good white people, only see racist attitudes or behaviors that are only coming from the bad white people. So something that I hear a lot, like in some spaces in San Diego, but especially the Bay Area, where politics are a little bit more, they're progressive, is that the only bad white people exist like in the South, and everybody else is like good white people. And so I think that kind of gets rid of this, like trying to separate themselves from the collective can kind of add into the problem, especially if they don't see themselves as a part of the problem. And so that's one example. Another example that we hear a lot is, when referring to Black folks, brown folks, other people of color, they say that, if only they got a job, their lives would not be that bad. If only they had paid attention in school and got that degree, then they'd be able to get a job. If only they, got themselves out of poverty, they wouldn't end up in jail. So again, this individualistic culture of saying, well, the individual is in charge of the life that they have, and the system has nothing to do with it. And so I wanted to name that this is kind of the dark side of individualism. As mentioned previously, individualism, it conveniently disconnects us from the collective. And there are centuries of anti-Blackness that have shown that Black people alone they're not going to be able to solve any individual problem that they have. And yet, folks feel little to no responsibility for the way that white folks or representations of whiteness from the collective can also play a part in that. And I say representations of whiteness because while I am a Latina in some parts of the world, if not in San Diego, I'm more of on the lighter side of being a Latina. So I might be experienced as a white Latina, as opposed to like my sisters and the rest of my family that are more on the dark side of the Latino skin range. And so while I might not explicitly be white, I can be experienced as white, and therefore I can be a representation of whiteness for folks. The other thing about individualism is that, you know, it disconnects us from a legacy that we have in the United States. I don't know how many times you all have heard that people argue against reparations because they themselves never enslaved anybody. So that's kind of something that we hear these days, is like, well, I didn't personally own a slave, or maybe my mother did not personally own a slave, so why, you know, should reparations be a thing? And again, this is just another way in which individualism is a convenient way to absolve a collective from collective responsibility. And so if by continuing to act in the same, by continuing to act out in these oppressive ways, we just continue the cycle of oppression. I think another example here is if we fail to see the parallelism between a white woman calling the police when she feels uncomfortable, somebody's having a barbecue or playing their music too loud, she calls the police. If we fail to see that parallel to a white mistress from the past calling her overseer to punish an enslaved person, then we really can't appreciate in full the weight of the violence of what individualism is. And so it seems that we have a choice. We either ignore our role in the collective and allow violence and oppression to always and already just be, or we accept responsibility for ourselves and others, and we try to disrupt this legacy where there is no such thing as collective responsibility. So that's kind of that half of individualism. Now for collectivism, this is more of like understanding what community care looks like. And I think I'll name that it's really hard to know, it's not always easy to know how to support one another during hard times because of this American individualistic thought that we have, that we're told to deal with our problems on our own. And so ultimately, it seems like the power and the initiative to care for ourselves is our responsibility to some extent. We should have a say in what that looks like. But it doesn't negate the fact that there's still a power of a collective responsibility, a collective care of working with each other. So I'm wondering if the folks can share a little bit on their understandings of that, if there's any questions on either of those things.
Are you asking if we have any questions on individualism versus collectivism?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that that it was clear.
Oh, you were very clear.
Yes.
I got it.
Okay, good.
Well done.
Okay, good. I'm also pretty confident that these are things that we already knew. So that's helpful. I guess the other thing I can add on the collectivism part is that most of the global South and in indigenous communities are coming from a collectivist view. And before the Atlantic slave trade, the slaves that were taken from the African tribes also practiced a collectivist view. And so when they were brought into the United States unwillingly they, in addition to the indigenous cultures here, were forced, you know, out of their own will to practice this individualistic culture. And so we'll see that it's trickled down to us over generations. And a lot of us still, we struggle with that, with knowing that, like, I feel like I am a collectivist and this might be rooted in my ancestry, but at the same time, I'm an American and there's so many things that that's hard to undo as an American, and feeling like an individual. And Lawana, I see that your hand is up.
So I just wanted to interject a little bit, because when you talk about the slave trade, language matters. And I think we have to remember that they went to Africa and they abducted people and then made them slaves. And it's a subtle thing, but I think that little piece of language helps to reinforce it, because there are people who in their mind believe that they went to Africa and found people who were slaves and then brought them here. And so they didn't really do anything that was that bad.
Right.
And
Yeah,
there's
I
even
think-
literature that says that.
Yeah.
That, oh, they were already slaves and they sold
Yeah.
them, and I
Yeah.
find that very hard to believe.
Yeah. So
Yeah. And Lawana, I appreciate you. Thank you for naming that. That must have been something that wasn't, I didn't overtly make clear.
oh no, I didn't. Yeah. I don't know that I would have interjected in a bigger group. I would have probably just sent you a direct message. But I felt like this was an intimate enough group that we could just have this conversation. And I think it will add power to your description when you're explaining to people collectivism versus individualism.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, since all of us are women and there's 3 Black women here, another reading, I'm not sure if folks have been able to tap into, but Bell Hooks writes Ain't I a Woman? And in there she talks about the men who were, the difference between the men and the women who were abducted at that time, where male slaves felt more of a pressure to kind of fall into this individualistic, this culture, while here in the United States, and the women at the time were fighting for the upkeep and the legacy of collectivism. And so there's kind of also this fight, if not between races, between the gender within races, of wanting to kind of move from individualism to a collectivism, keeping legacy while also making sure you're keeping some kind of privilege of power. And so there are a lot of dynamics here that that they should be considered, and language is included in that. So Lawana, thank you for naming that.
And I want to add for you that dynamic in terms of feeling like they had to buy into the individualistic culture, that was by design.
Right.
Because part of the system of slavery, part of what they did is they emasculated men,
right,
by elevating and giving more power to women.
Right. And you know, that's something that we see a lot in the United States and Western culture, is emasculating men of color, specifically Black men, and women of color, specifically Black women, having to deal with that dynamic, having to sit with the complexity of that. And so I wanted to share how something that's very, very popular when we're talking about individualism is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is kind of something that's very popular in psychology. And he names that when it comes to our needs as individuals, the individual is prioritized and is kind of removed from this context of community and spirituality. So as an individual, like, our first needs are to have food, water, shelter, and warmth. After we have kind of those things, then our next thing is safety. What does security look like? What does stability look like? Freedom from fear, kind of things like that. And then so on and so forth, up the hierarchy of needing belonging, needing a spouse so you can, you're able to procreate and create like a legacy. Next thing from there is feeling happy with yourself, feeling like you can achieve something, you can get a job. And then there's self-actualization of feeling like, okay, I'm feeling fulfilled. I've met all my basic needs. And so I wanted to name that. While this hierarchy is very popular in psychology, it's also very popular in the way that a lot of therapists and a lot of counselors are dealing with folks right now, that it is coming from an individualistic lens, and it's not really taking into account the community or culture or different experiences for folks where this might not look exactly like that. And so I'm not sure if folks have seen this before, but I know that I've seen it a lot, and it's kind of been, like I said, embedded in a lot of the ways that we as Americans think about self-care. And we think about our individual needs to be safe, to feel like we belong, to feel like we are in partnership with someone, and then feeling like we have a good job to participate in the capitalistic culture, and then feeling like that's pretty much it. Those are all the things that I need to do in life. So there was a couple of years ago, Maslow's hierarchy of needs was kind of debunked through indigenous eyes, in that like human needs should be non-hierarchical and should allow for a case-by-case model for this balance between the personal and the collective. And so you see here kind of a model of what that looks like in comparison to this triangle where things are kind of structured. Things are more in a circle. So perhaps for folks, where housing isn't always guaranteed. Iris, I think you spoke to this in terms of working with a population of homeless folks, where those things might be like not necessarily afforded for them, but maybe spirituality is kind of number one on their list, having a sense of hope, having a sense of meaning.
And I try to give them that, but sometimes they're just in that space to where they just don't want to hear it. But I give it to them anyway. Just really quick, the other day, I was helping this gentleman. He just thought I was just going to keep telling him no. And I kept telling him yes. And he says, I could feel the spirit from you. And I'm not supposed to reach. I have all gloves and protective gear, but I reached out and grabbed his hands, and he just let out like a good 2-minute prayer, which I thought was only going to be a minute because people are waiting in line still to be serviced. But it was a beautiful prayer, and he thanked the Lord for me for helping him, thinking, all this stuff, and he put in some of his stuff in there. And it was a great feeling that the little bit that I did that day, I'm just doing my job, just really made him feel the need to do that, and felt great about it. So I was empowered by that.
Yeah, I appreciate you for sharing that. I think it speaks to, at least that individual's experience.
Yes.
Yeah, for that spirituality is like the number one thing, is the number. And perhaps it is by owning a sense of spirituality that they can move forward into now feeling a sense of love and belonging and relationships with folks. And then maybe it's shelter and food and water and security. But again, the idea here from the collectivist view is to think of our needs as non-hierarchical, like they're within each other and they're always existing, and we're never kind of finished with one and we move on to the other. They coexist, and sometimes they're a lot larger than we need them to be or want them to be, or sometimes they're a lot smaller. So this this exact format might not be, you know, your experience, Iris, or your experience, Lawana, or Micah, but it might be somebody else's experience. And so acknowledging that these things are kind of ever flowing for individuals, and again, they in the fourth circle, that can be anything that you want it to be. And the reason why it's blank is it is acknowledging that different folks have different needs, and it is a case-by-case basis. Well, I might feel like yesterday, this is my hierarchy of needs. Tomorrow it might be different. You know, my safety, shelter, and food and water security might be, you know, the first thing that I'm needing if there's racial unrest or social unrest going on outside of my home. So we don't have a large enough group, so we can keep it intimate with one another. So I wanted to hear more about what you think about the different hierarchy of needs. Where are you? Are you kind of still in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs of individualism? Where would you like to be, and things like that?
So I'm going to say that I've been fortunate enough to be able to navigate it. I try to live at that highest level. I dip. I dip, you dip, we dip. But you know, the spirituality aspect is a big part of that. And even in how we approach it, because if you genuinely have faith in God or the universe or the law of attraction or abundance, um, you feel a lot more comfortable staying at that higher level of the hierarchy, even when you can't see how your needs are going to be met. When you don't have faith, then it's really hard to ascend that hierarchy unless you see how your needs are going to be met.
Hmm. Wow.
I agree with what Lawana said. Totally. Hold on, my family's calling me.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree as well. But there's no way I could do any of this individualistic lifestyle that, you know, we've all been kind of conditioned to live under without embracing my own knowledge of self and of God. Let's just put it out there. There's just no way I can manage any of this because this is a mess.
A lot
Yeah.
of the distraction.
What was that, Lavana? I didn't hear.
A lot of it is a distraction because the reality is, if you really, and it's a test too, because if you believe that your needs are going to be met and that you're going to be okay, then it gives you the freedom to be kind and generous to other people. And that kindness and generosity impacts how you interact with those people, even how you relate from a standpoint of trust. And I will have to say I've been thinking about, because I try to reflect. I think that an advantage, and most people wouldn't say this is an advantage, but one advantage I have when approaching this space is having been in positions of like having absolutely nothing and being, even so far as like being in a strange town where I knew no one and I was stranded and alone, and I still ended up being okay. And I didn't end up homeless or on the street. I think I was too naive to not accept help. And so I accepted help and trusted the help until I got back home when I was a teenager. So I think, there are a lot of things we have to unlearn. Because that individualism, it doesn't just make it hard for the person who is making decisions and has power to be considerate and think of other people besides themselves. And power is relative, but it also makes it hard for people to see the value that they bring even when they have nothing but themselves.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, I can just add in that I've lived in countries where it occurred to me that the people don't even use the term God, like, oh my God, that happened, or thank goodness, or thank God. Like, it just doesn't even come up. Like, there are cultures that exist that don't embrace the concept of that. And I find that very uncomfortable. I mean, I don't feel safe, but I do feel safe on the other hand, knowing that I have that faith, regardless of, the culture that I'm in or living in.
Yeah, I'm also
What happened?
Oh no. Yeah, I think for some reason we've been having some issues tonight. I don't know. That's like that would be the third time that she went off.
Oh,
But that was happening before the session, of course. But I think she'll jump right on because she knows we already know it's been happening. I don't know
I
what
think
that.
I think a lot of people are using Zoom and it's probably overloading the system.
I was thinking that. I was thinking that too. Yeah, because I don't typically have that problem, like just people just dropping off like that.
It's a lot. There are a lot of watch night parties happening. So, like
Yes.
in San Diego, they don't start until 8 o'clock. And I imagine, I'm drinking coffee because I know I'm gonna be up late. Um,
Right.
it'll pick up even more. So, like at 8 o'clock, I'm gonna have to start looking at moving over.
Hmm.
But Iris, you were getting ready to say something before all of this happened, and I don't want you to lose your thought.
Oh, I was in a training class for supervisors, and we talked about that the Maslow and all those different things of hierarchies and how there's a plethora of different ways to look at different things.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that very interesting because in the class, of course, you have a cross section, you have people that were my age or slightly older, all the way down to the 20 somethings. And then we had a little bit of everything culturally in the room. So it was always a lively conversation and a lot of, as they say, aha, as Oprah says, aha
Mm-hmm.
moments. Like I would have never thought that. Or they'll say that to me because I think it was me and two or three other African Americans in the group, which is rare because a lot of times either I am the only one or there's usually just one or two others. And a lot of times when we go to these trainings, and I hate to even say it, but we're being truthful this evening.
Yes.
A lot of times I would not speak my truth because if I did,
Right.
I would be seen. I think that I would have been seen in a certain way
Right.
instead of them seeing who I really am. If I talk about, different things, but I had one of the facilitators was African American and he was not having it. He would call on us and say, has this ever happened to you? And you go, oh man.
You want to add in a comment, huh?
Yes, which was really good because it made them think like, wow, I never would have thought that you would think that. And I said, well, you're not me, and you did, yeah, and you never, lived. When I was growing up, my neighborhood in Southeast was still very much populated with white people still. It was a good cross section, a lot of Japanese, because all of this in Southeast used to be nothing but Japanese farmland from way back.
Southeast San
So
Diego?
that's why, if you grew up in Southeast, that's why you would see pockets of Japanese people still here. And stuff, and that's why your lawns and everything are so fertile. You plant something and up it pops. But and I think that I was very fortunate that I was raised with a lot of different cultures. And even on my street, it's still very much, I still have Japanese, some Laotians. We have almost a little bit of everything still on the little street that I grew up on. So I can fit into different situations very easily. My parents always made us go into cross-cultural type of things, but still very much holding on to our Blackness at the same time.
Yeah.
So I feel that I'm fortunate in that sense, but a lot of times I find myself, keeping my mouth shut, And even with what's been going on lately, the people in my office never spoke about it. They never came to me and said, Iris, how do you feel about this? Unless I brought it up first, and then they'll say something, which was and I've worked with a lot of these people for over 10 years in my little office. And it hurts, but I kind of understand. They still want to keep their blinders on and keep things like that, which is kind of sad. Oh, well, thank you, Luana.
I popped off, and I'm sorry that I didn't get to hear what was sparking this conversation, but it sounds very fruitful. It sounds very good.
I wanted to say what the link was before you transition. It was a link to a poem by Kyla Lacey. I've seen the video, but I think just seeing the first words of the poem, and it was inspired by what you said, Iris. She said, we learned your French, we learned your English, your Dutch, your Spanish, your Portuguese. You learned our nothing. You call us stupid.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So anyway, you can go back to that, but because otherwise it wouldn't be relevant. Sorry.
No, I actually think that that's the perfect transition. What I want us to do, since we're talking about, individualism, but also the collectivism, is that I wanted us to kind of get a sense of how that exists within us. And so if you all can find a writing utensil and a piece of paper, we're going to do some drawing. And we're going to write some things as well. So I'll give you maybe some time to find, again, a writing utensil and a piece of paper. Probably like a blank sheet of paper or like an 8x11 or something like that. And let me know when you all are ready and you're good to go. I'm going to get my stuff too ready right now.
I'm still trying to print the thing that you gave us. Me and my printer get into fights.
Well, me and Zoom have been getting into fights today. So how about Zoom. Earlier with Mika, Zoom was kicking me out, and I was like, this better not happen in the presentation, and then it did. So
Yeah, there's
rude.
a lot of stuff going on right now on Zoom. It's
Yeah.
bursting. You know, Zoom wasn't ready for the pandemic.
No. And I wish I would have bought some stock.
Well, you know, there's a lot of senators who did.
Right?
Oh, I bet. I bet.
When they found out about the pandemic, instead of telling us how bad it might be, they went and bought stock in WebEx, Citrus, Cisco.
I'm sure they did.
Because they knew this is how everybody was going to.
Yeah.
Well,
Was
didn't
going
they
to be
create the
communicating.
Or didn't they create a scenario so that we would have to use all of this? I don't know.
All right, so does everybody have a sheet of paper or something and like a pencil or a marker or anything like that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So what we're gonna do is, it doesn't have to look exactly like this, but the first thing that I want you to do is to make sure that you draw a tree that involves all of these things. So the roots, the ground, and it needs to be a big tree because we're going to also write stuff on each of these things. So we're writing things on the roots, on the ground, on the trunk, on the branches, on the leaves, and the fruit. So make it large enough where you can add stuff in it if you need to. But let's make sure that it kind of looks like this, but you know, I'm not as artistic as that, so no pressure. But there's roots, there's a ground, there's a trunk, there's some branches, leaves on the branches. And I like to add a fruit, like I like to add a basket of fruit kind of on the ground, or you can decide to put the fruit on the branches or something like that, however you want to do it. And I'll give you some time so you can do that. And then, yeah, I'll give you about 2 minutes to do that. And then I'll lead us through what we're going to write on each of these things. Okay, how we doing? Does everybody have their tree?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's okay. We're not going to show it to anybody unless you want to.
Thank God for
Right?
that. I am not. My other sister is the artiste in the house.
I get it. I didn't want to
She
show my
would be looking at me like, "What is this?"
Yeah, no worries. We're not going to show it to anybody unless you want to. But the point of this is to get you to think about your story, your narrative, your individual experience, but also as it relates to the collective. So for the roots, what I want you to do is on the roots or, you know, around it, but somewhere kind of within the vicinity of the roots, let's write down where you come from. This can be your hometown, your state, your country, and you can write, you know, as many things as you want to write. So whatever roots mean for what they mean for you. You can also write down like the culture that you grew up in, maybe a club, a church, an organization that shaped your youth, or maybe your parents, your guardians, your grandparents, your great grandparents. And I did want to signify too that the roots can be things that you were proud of, but also some things that you might not be proud of. So let's take some time to write down where we come from, what's in our roots. I'll give everybody about 30 more seconds. All right. When you're ready, let's move up to the ground. So I don't know how you all signified your ground, but I just drew a line like over the roots and right before the trunk. So on the ground,
I did that too.
Okay, good. So, that's what a ground looks like for me. On the ground, I want you to write down the things that you choose to do on a daily basis, weekly basis, or maybe monthly basis or yearly. But these are the things that ground you. So these aren't things that people can force you to do, but rather things that you choose to do for yourself. So that's what we're writing on the ground.
That's the key.
I'll give everybody about 10 more seconds. Okay, so for the trunk, on the trunk or next to the trunk, alongside the trunk, however you want to do it, let's write down the skills and the values. And so I chose to write my values kind of at the starting base of the trunk, and then I work my way up into my skills. For me, it just feels like a progression, like this is where my values are, and it kind of led to these skills, but you can do it however you want. Your skills and your values on your trunk. And I'll give you probably about a minute for you to do that. All right, about 10 more seconds. I know we got some powerful people here, so you got to write. Make sure you write down all of them, all those skills and those values that you have. Now for the leaves that you have, on each of the leaves, if there's space for you to write it, or above the leaves or something like that, or within the leaves, let's write down the names of those. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped the branches. For the branches, excuse me, we're going to write our hopes, your dreams, and your wishes on the branches. And this can be for you as an individual. It could be for the community, however you define the word community. It could be for the globe, for the universe. You'll want to think both long-term and short-term. And this one I'll give you about a little bit longer. Let's take 2 minutes to think about and write down our hopes, dreams, and our wishes, as big or as small as they might be. What was that all about? You okay now? Maybe if you didn't try to eat and run at the same time. If you can start wrapping up the hopes, dreams, and wishes, I'll give everybody about 15 more seconds. All right. If you're ready, let's move on to the leaves. And on the leaves, we're going to write down the names of those who are significant to you in a positive way. This can be your friends, your family, the name of your pets, heroes, sheroes, and this is for past and present. So writing down the names of those who are significant to you in a positive way on the leaves. And I'll give you about a minute for that. All right. And last but certainly not least, for the fruit. And again, you can decide if this fruit, some of you maybe decided to put it on the tree, or you can put it in a basket on the ground. But for the fruit, we're going to write down the legacies that have been passed on to you. So I think what makes this a little easier is if you look at the names that you just wrote on the leaves, and think about the impact that they have had on you in your youth or in your adulthood, or maybe you've never met them before. But think about what they've given to you as a gift over the years. And this can be material-wise. Maybe some of you have gotten some inheritance, but mostly like let's think about like attributes like courage, or humility, or kindness, or education, something like that. So the fruit is going to be to write down the legacies that have been passed on to you. And I'm noticing that this can come from the names that we've written on the leaves. It can also come from our roots. And I'll give folks a minute to do that.
All right, I think y'all are wonderful. I've enjoyed this exercise, but now I gotta head over and go be candidately.
All right. I hope you enjoyed it.
I
Yes.
really did. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you
attending.
for all that you said, Luana. I got a lot. Thank you so much, dear.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
good
you.
luck.
I always appreciate being able to be in community, particularly with women.
Hmm.
Um, take care. Have a great night.
Yeah, and good luck, Lawana. We wish you the best. Like we said, we voted for you on the ballot today. So all the best to you. We were fighting for you.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Bye bye.
All right. So the reason why I had us do this activity is because I just shared with you two different models of like hierarchy of needs. One of them was kind of very structured in a triangle. Another was very circular and fluid. I'd like to think that this version in an artistic way is also, it can be looked at as a different hierarchy of needs as we think about where we come from, what grounds us, what our values are, who the people in our lives, individuals or community members that mean a lot to us. And so I wanted to give folks the opportunity to maybe share a little bit about what this process was like for you, what is coming up as you're looking at, you know, your full self or, you know, in terms of the tree of the things that you've written down. What are some aspects of maybe individualism that you see? What are some aspects of collectivism that you see as well?
Wow, just having us just to put it down, the good and the bad and the roots, because all of it makes you who you are. I struggled with the values, which is strange because I know that I have good values, but putting a name to them was kind of difficult. But I could easily say what my skills were, though, which was interesting to me. And then when we got to the branches and was talking about what my hopes and dreams are, I was happy to write down a lot of things, even at my age, even though I'm not ancient, but even at my age, how I still have a lot of hopes and dreams, which kind of lightened my heart because, you know, you go through life and you want certain things. And I was I'm surprised that I had like a lot of positive things. And then the people, I had a younger cousin that's in her early 40s that she was leaving one job and going to another, and she decided to go back to where my father's side of the family is from. Her grandfather is my dad's brother that's just up under him. And as many times as we've been back, my father, his sisters and brothers never took us to where their mother's gravesite was, but my cousin Angelinette did. And so she has pictures of grave sites of family that we talked about all of our lives, because my grandmother died very young. She died when she was just 31, 32. My dad was only like 13, 14 years old when she died. But just to see her gravesite, and then when I was showing my dad the pictures, I could just see him getting choked up. Seeing his mom's gravesite, seeing his younger sister that passed away when I was 7, seeing the aunts that fostered him when he was growing up, the pictures from the family reunions and then seeing their grave sites. To this day, my grandmother didn't like to take pictures, and my aunt has one of the only pictures of her. And I go back every year and I say, Aunt, I don't want to take the picture. I just want to take a picture of the picture. And she will not go and get that picture. I don't know. I guess she figures that we're gonna run off with it, but because my dad's the oldest, and I'm not. And I kept telling her that. I said, Auntie, I just want to take a picture of the picture. She went, in that Southern tone. And
oh my God, they don't get it.
No, but trust me, when all this is over, we're gonna have like a big family reunion back there. And I'm gonna ask my cousin Angela Nett to do what she did for my younger cousin, have her to take us around, where everybody is buried, so we can, pay homage, to these three sisters that birthed like, all of us. We have all the names. We're really good about tracking, our family and everything, but still, it's almost, did you guys watch Lovecraft?
I did. I saw that. Yes.
All the finale.
Did you guys listen? Did you guys listen to the podcast that went with the episodes?
I did. That's the one thing I didn't do.
Yeah, trust me, because I would listen to them. I would watch the episode and then listen to it the next day on my lunch hour, because the podcasts are under an hour.
What are those about? Like
they talk about the episode. One of the persons that was a writer on the show, so she could give that background about how they developed and how they did the characters, why they did certain things, how they wanted, some people wanted this, some people wanted that. But I have to warn you, they curse like sailors. And the other young lady that does the podcast, she's like a horror enthusiast. So you get her aspect of why the Monksters are the way that they look and how they look. They give you books to read. They talk about the music. But what I got out of Lovecraft was the family aspect of it. The sisters fighting. My two older sisters almost fight like that. And how hurtful legacies get brought down through the generations, how people don't tell you certain things that happen, and how that can hurt you. Those family secrets and stuff like that. And I would just when Lovecraft would come on Sundays, I would just post on Facebook, Lovecraft.
Oh God.
And everybody's going, what is it about this Lovecraft? And then when a friend of mine, a male friend, said, oh, so you've been holding out. I said, I haven't been holding out. It's just, and I'm not big on horror because I have a vivid imagination and and my mother stopped me from watching horror movies ever since I was a little girl. Of course, when I got into junior high and stuff, I started watching them again. Wow. But I was scared, but I wasn't, because of how they intertwined them in the story, how the Monksters had a purpose of doing things. And how many of you guys thought that the Black Monkster at the end is really the uncle?
Oh,
I really thought that.
Really?
The ones that would bite the people, and then they became one of them, right? You notice that Black one just showed up in Chicago, saved them and just went to Atticus and just put his head down so he can pat his hand.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't figured that one out.
Right, I didn't either. You thought that was the uncle?
Yes.
Oh,
Because
wow.
even though you notice that they did not have a funeral for the uncle.
They did not.
Think about that.
No, I just assumed it was.
And they didn't even even in the podcast. I thought maybe that they would have said something, and they didn't, because I can understand just in case they were gonna do another season of it. But when I was doing this tree, I was really thinking about the stories that weren't told. Just like my dad would rarely talk about my grandmother, but my aunt said, "I'll talk about her."
Oh, you were lucky.
I will talk about her. So she would tell us like different things about her, but my dad wouldn't.
Wow.
My dad wouldn't. I guess it's just, since he's the oldest, the oldest sees everything. You know what I'm saying?
I didn't understand it, but my family is very similar, coming from the South. I guess they're all from the South, Selma, Alabama. And when I was making my tree, my roots as well, and I've only heard these stories from my mother, because I don't know the family like that very well either, because they didn't like to talk about the family, as you know, for some reason. And I really resented that, because I always felt like you needed to have that history. You needed to have that background to it makes you into who you are, basically, knowing your history, your family. So only recently, and I'm definitely over 40, my mom told me, she's starting to tell me stories now about how our family was, hardworking, and they had land, and they worked for 30 years for the same, things like this that I never even knew. But what I did know is that they kept so many secrets, which divided the sisters until this day, which I obviously connected with the story of the sisters, and it's unfortunate. And then the whole idea of individualism being like a part of my tree that I didn't like.
Yeah.
Which kind of is unfortunate, but it is the culture that we've, I guess, grown up in. But yeah, that's interesting you say that about the family and the secrets. And now when they want to talk about it, I feel so much better knowing that,
Yes. That's why when all of us get together, we try to get the older persons to talk. And that's why, so we don't have to go to Lewis Gate and have him to do our tree.
Wow.
For us to do our tree, that, anytime somebody has a baby or has anything, we married, divorced, and all of that, so we would not lose a sense of self.
Right. So important.
Like that. So this has been so great, ladies. Oh my gosh.
I'm so happy. That you all like it.
I'm glad, something, and I'm glad we had a small group. Not maybe this small, but a small, you know what I mean, a small group to where all of us can feel comfortable letting our hair down, so to speak.
Yeah, the other part about this activity that I wanted to name was that while each of us are making sense of our roots and some of the things that we're proud of and some of the things we're not proud of, is that imagine, we can probably fill in the blanks, but imagine what this tree would look like if we asked this country, the United States, for them
to,
right? Be a totally different looking tree.
It'd be a totally different.
You would have people saying everything is just fine. And
Right.
then all the rest of us going, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
It-
So yeah, so one of the important pieces of this is that, like, while we have our own tree, there are whole communities and whole countries and systems that also have their own tree of understanding what they're rooted in, what grounds them, what their values are, what their branches are. And I think the important part here is to realize that a collectivist view would be to honor that each of us come from something we might not be proud of or might not had a choice in. And yet we are still standing and we are still here. And so I think, you know, that might be helpful for us this day, this month, this year, to think about what our hopes and dreams are, to think about
yes.
each legacy that each of us hold, you know, irregardless of what is to come, what is to happen. So I hope that it was helpful in that way.
Oh, most definitely.
I agree.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, like I said before, I was surprised how many hopes and dreams that I was still
Mhm.
able to label.
Right. And that's a healthy
Mhm.
thing. That's
Yes,
a good thing. And I
yes.
noticed that too, even though I was like stunted halfway up the tree with my individualism and whatnot, I was like, wow, there's still hope. Thank God.
Mhm.
So we are just a little short out of time, but I do want to get us maybe to think about this question. I'll skip through this stuff, but think about this question right here. So what do you think what individual action do you think can be taken for us to move from one state to another? And then what do you think the collective action looks like for us to be able to move from one state into another?
Um, for me, for the individual part is to, I guess, just try to be more open, even though I'm a very open person, but I can quickly close myself off too.
Yeah. Easy.
when I need to. I guess I just have to just try to be as open as I can and try to be more honest. This is hard for me to think about that because I do so much better in a collective environment where, you know, you feed off of everybody else's energy and ideas, or you may tweak, you know, something and then everything starts flowing and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with her that the openness is important, or maybe just the idea of embracing people regardless of where we are, and my thoughts on where we should be and where we're heading. I mean, I don't know what this election is going to bring, but I do feel like it's going to be some of the same stuff happening over and over and over and over again. So that definitely makes me want to hide. But
Yeah, I would.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Go ahead. No, because I
sorry.
already opened my mouth. I have to be mindful to let somebody else speak.
I would love to hear more from you, Iris, but I'll just add. I think I'll just add. I feel very similar to Iris, what you first said about there being some struggle around the individual action, since I do find a lot of comfort and a lot of love in a collective aspect. I would say individually, the action that I can take is to invest more into my self-care, because I think that as young as I am, and as a mom, I'm constantly like trying to take care of others. And
Yeah.
so I know that it's much harder. It's much harder to take care of myself when I'm really busy taking care of others. So I can get really caught up in the collective that I forget about the individual part.
Yeah.
So I can at least acknowledge that that's kind of the action that I want to take.
I agree wholeheartedly, because my oldest sister will always say, you know, Iris, it's great that you're helpful, but you are helpful to the detriment of yourself. So I have just recently learned to say, okay, Iris, you need to step back and let them carry on, because you want to, like, as my middle sister says, you're such a fixer, like mom. You're such a fixer. What? This needs to be fixed. Well, come on, let's come up with a plan. Let's do this. Da, 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 you know, and sometimes I get so burnt out, and I pull away from people, you know, because I think, okay, I gave them all the tools, so they don't need me now. So I'll pull away and go to another group and do that. But yet when I come across these people again, it's like no time has like elapsed, right? Because we had that cohesiveness on doing something, or just even hanging out, you know, and stuff like that. So I understand about the self-care. I'm still trying to learn that about myself, is to stop and let other people, you know, so I can recharge. And well, you know, in the beginning I was talking about how tight my shoulders were, and how much just that breathing, you know, helped me ease up some of that. This has been great, ladies. I swear, this has been great. I needed this so much, and thank you, and thank you again.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much for attending. And I guess
Did we lose
Selena?
No, I'm here. I just
okay.
my husband came in and started using the restroom, and I'm like, "What are you doing? Like, can you?" To be on
You
mute.
notice every once in a while I had to mute myself.
Yeah, we
can't. My daddy was watching Picard on my tablet. My sister, how do you cut this stuff off?
Yeah. I'm really, one of the things that I'm stuck with is this idea that you can't pour from an empty cup. Yes. Right. So while there's a lot of harm in the individualistic the culture, in some aspect we do have to take care of ourselves for ourselves, so that we can take care of our community. Like community care is self-care. They should kind of be the same.
Just like when you're on the airplane, you have to put the oxygen on you first. Before you can help everybody else out there.
Yes.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So Mika, did you want me to go to the next slide?
Yes, 8:30. Yeah, we should finish up. Then we don't want to keep
Iris. I am supposed to be like Lamana. I am supposed to be on the some other things. All the pop-ups keep coming up, but
no, me too.
I'm not the star of the show, so I can get on when I want to.
Well, thank you so much. We enjoyed our time together, really.
Oh, thank you.
And we appreciate you continuing with our sessions. We enjoy having you here. And hopefully you were able to get your worksheet And
Oh, yeah, I did finally get it to print. Yes, I did.
yay,
Yes, I
okay.
did.
And if you are able to, then I want to put in a survey in the chat. You know, if you want to fill it out, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine as well. But thank you and the best of luck, and we'll see you soon for maybe our next session where we're going to actually attack Blacks in technology. We have Janae Butler. She's from Google, and she's going to talk to us a little bit of
Oh,
her experience and Blacks' experience in living and working.
yes, because I'm opening up all the Google Docs so I won't lose them after the. I have learned
Yeah,
to open them up during the